Hello, hello, Jordan Chariton, joined by my comrade JT Cestkowski. It is Wednesday. What the hell day or year are we in?
The March 11th.
March 11th, the year 2026 in the United Corporations of America. It has been a little bit since I've been live. My basement got flooded, so that's been fun. Today I've been able to use it for the first time in a bit. That is where my studio is, and I have also, as JT knows, I have been doing a whole lot of behind the scenes things for this growing empire known as Status Coup, and I will talk about those behind the scenes things and give you a little bit more information for Status Coup members. Hint, hint, on our members only call tomorrow night. That's right. You know, JT, I got to be honest, since you're still fairly new here, we're supposed to do a members call every month, but I don't know. The fascism has just been so out of control. We couldn't do a members call for several months because you were too busy getting gassed and shot at in Chicago and then Minneapolis. And it's just one thing after the other that we just didn't have any time to do a members call, not because we were vacationing, but because things were crazy. But we are going to be back at it with our members tomorrow night. So this is a great opportunity. If you're already a Status Coup member, you will get the video link shortly before the call, which is tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. Colin will explain later how you get that because I always get it wrong, but you'll get a link if you're a member shortly before the call, about a half hour before. If you're not yet a Status Coup member, what in God's name are you doing? 16 cents a day. You could join us for as low as 16 cents a day. That's $5 a month. But we have a lot to talk about, and I would say I'll have some updates that the public doesn't know, but our members will get on tomorrow night's call. So you got to sign up, statuscoup.com/join, and we'll have a lot of fun. Usually we go an hour, 2 hours. I'll be there. JT will be there. Probably not for the whole thing because he's got a newborn. Colin will be there. I think Michelle will be there and whoever else. All right. That's number one. Number two, I've been up since 4:30 in the morning, by the way, so I might lose my train of thought. I had a number two, but I forgot. So we'll leave that away. Oh, no. I just remembered number two. We will have, if I could finish the story by tomorrow, I think I can. We will have a rather juicy, I would say, story tomorrow on Jeffrey Epstein's so-called suicide, which we have been covering here extensively. JT's done quite a few videos. I've done quite a few videos. I spoke with Dr. Michael Baden today for 20 minutes. Dr. Michael Baden, he's a pretty infamous, famous kind of autopsy doctor, known as a forensic pathologist. He had an HBO show, Autopsy, where he was the main guy. He's done a lot of the celebrity autopsies. Anyway, I spoke with him for 20 minutes. I would say he said some things that were relatively new and newsworthy. So I still need to go through the whole interview, but I think there's some key takeaways that cast further doubt on this so-called suicide. And JT and I were going through it via text, but I think whether he killed himself or whether he was killed is directly related and connected to this widespread global sex trafficking ring. So, without further ado, JT, how the hell are you?
I am well, Jordan, aside from also being exhausted, as you know, on the back end here. We're a little bit of like the blind leading the blind because I am also, pretty close to hallucinating from how tired I am, mostly because I'm on a new medication that seems to have just absolutely wiped me out, though. I took some of your tips before we started our call, including putting the ice cubes under the eyes, and it seems to have done wonders for me. So I'm at least with it enough to talk Epstein coherently, I think.
And by the way, tell the audience, I did say to you, if you were too tired, I could do this solo. So I did give you the opportunity.
Yes. And for all legal justifications for Status Coup, I hold them harmless here for any damage that is caused to me, because yes, Jordan did give me the option to not be on this call today, but I insisted.
All right. Without further ado, Obviously, the Iran war is the big story. I think you have a whole lot of other places you can go to for that. Not that we don't find it important, but obviously we try to cover and fill in the gaps elsewhere. We have covered the protests, the Stop Iran War protests in New York City, in Chicago, I believe it was, in Minneapolis, and we will continue to. But we want to get into more of the Epstein files, specifically. If it smells like a cover-up and it quacks like a cover-up, it's a cover-up. We're going to start here. And JT, I'm going to give this to you. Maybe you could read some of the Reuters story. Apparently, we know that parts of the Epstein files were hacked. This came out months ago. But now there's new information. Reuters reported today that seems to maybe answer some questions about why Trump might be doing some of the things he's doing. Can you tell us what the story is and what's new here in Reuters' story about apparently a foreign hacker hacked into the Epstein files a couple months ago?
Yeah, absolutely. You're diving into it right there. So I'll just throw it up here on the screen. This is the new report from Reuters that exclusive foreign hacker in 2023 compromised Epstein files held by the FBI, sources and documents show. What I want to call attention to there is that first word, or I guess the second word after exclusive, but foreign is the new information here. This is information that had come out as part of the Epstein files release at the end of February. There was quite a bit of conversation on Twitter about this hack. There were some documentations in the Epstein files that we can get to in just a little bit that I have pulled up as well. But it starts with this idea that there's some information in the Epstein files that shows that the FBI was hacked, and included in that hack, the hacking party was able to get access to some of the Epstein files. And today, Reuters is reporting that that hacker was foreign. Specifically, what they say is a foreign hacker compromised files related to the FBI's investigation of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein during a break-in at the Bureau's New York field office 3 years ago, according to a source familiar with the matter and recently published Justice Department documents reviewed by Reuters. The details of who accessed a server at the FBI's New York field office, including the allegations that a foreign hacker was involved, are being reported here for the first time. In a statement, the FBI said what it described as a cyber incident was an isolated one. The FBI restricted access to the malicious actor and rectified the network. The investigation remains ongoing, so we do not have further comments to provide at this time. Although the source said the intrusion appeared to have been carried out by a cyber criminal rather than a foreign government, the incident underscores the file's potential intelligence value, one academic source said. And I think we can get to that in just a moment, but I do want to just pause there and, reflect on the fact that the FBI is saying here that the investigation supposedly remains ongoing right now. So 3 years later, they're still investigating this incident. I think, Jordan, at least my read on this from having done quite a few law enforcement stories is law enforcement loves to claim that something is still an ongoing and active investigation when they just don't want to talk about it. It's clear from what we're about to get into here,
or don't want to give journalists documents, so they hide behind ongoing investigation. We cannot provide you the documents that you've requested.
Correct. Yeah. So that's what immediately jumped out to me is this is clearly something that is sensitive to the Bureau. I mean, obviously it's a fucking embarrassment that they allowed this kind of intrusion here in the first place. But then the second point there is just the fact that it seems like it wasn't this coordinated effort from a foreign government. At least that's what they're claiming here. The source is telling Reuters that it's not a foreign government that's doing this infiltration, and that this is just some person, some guy in another country that's doing this. And the fact that you're going to see in here in this story that we're about to get to that they're able to detect when this random guy kind of accidentally wanders into the FBI's servers and is able to compromise them. It does make you see, though, as they start to highlight here in this story, how valuable the fucking Epstein files are just by the virtue of them being secret, and really underscores, I think, the Trump administration's continued desire to keep them so secret and continue this cover up of the Epstein files is I mean, it's so blatant here, because if there were a foreign government that wanted access to these files, I mean, I would think that they could cover up their tracks a lot more easily than just some guy can. And so we don't know who has all been able to get access to these files as a result of that.
So I have a lot to say here, and I'm going to try not to do a long dissertation. Number one, kind of a distinction without a difference. A cyber criminal versus a foreign government hacking, basically the same thing. I mean, if a foreign government is hacking us, that would also be a crime. And also there have been cases where a independent cyber hacker is hacking on behalf of a foreign government. So it doesn't need to be the Israeli government hacked us. Not that I'm saying it was, but it could just be a rando on behalf of a foreign government. I mean, we do know that the Democrats for years and years were huffing and puffing that, Russian hackers were hacking the DNC servers on behalf of the Russian government. Even though, hate to tell you, remember, the DNC would never give the FBI access to their computers. Wonder why. Anyway, so I don't really care whether it was a cyber hacker or a foreign government. It could still be on behalf of a foreign government. Number two, complete speculation. To be clear, no evidence to support this, but one has to surmise. People have been wondering, why is Mr. Anti-War Donald Trump launching war in Iran? Why was essentially, it seems, he's already won re-election. He can't run again, we think. So he doesn't have to, return the favors of Miriam Adelson, who gave him $250 million. So why is basically he turned into Israel's bitch? I mean, that's what he is. I mean, Marco Rubio acknowledged publicly, yeah, we bombed Iran because Israel basically forced us into it. Pete Hegseth said the same thing. So again, no evidence, but we do know Israel spies on enemies and allies alike. We know China tries to hack. We know Russia tries to hack. And can you think of anything more prime, any more prime material than the Epstein files, which frankly, if it was a foreign government trying to hack the Epstein files, they might be trying to hack it to shield themselves because some of their government might be implicated in the Epstein files.
I want to jump in on that point, because as soon as I had the exact same thoughts that you did, that, yeah, it's probably a distinction without a difference. And even if it was just one guy, I mean, who's to say that a foreign government didn't get access? And it has just reminded me of little statements that have been made by different foreign leaders over recent years, especially as the Epstein files have come back into the public consciousness in such a profound way. But most recently, I thought of this post that was posted by Ayatollah Khamenei shortly before his death, where he posted, "This island of corruption is only one example," an apparent reference to Little St. James Island, Epstein's island. There is much more of this. Just as this was not apparent and then became exposed, there are many other things that will soon come to light. I don't know. Maybe that's all bluster, but just the timing that he says this right before the U.S. goes in for to start its air war against Iran, I think is notable, and also shows the fact that at least governments feel like they can use the Epstein files as a point of leverage over Donald Trump to try and say, like, you don't want those Epstein files to come out, right? Better not attack us.
Right. And by the way, I doubt I'm the only one saying this, but if Donald Trump is an expert in one thing, and he's a dummy on most things, but if he's an expert on one thing, it's manipulating the media. It's changing the topic. It's changing the story. He's done it throughout his presidency. He's done it throughout his life. I mean, hell, he got $4 billion in free advertising during the 2015, 2016 period running just by being a circus animal. I mean, I remember I was in Washington Square Park covering Bernie Sanders' presidential rally in 2016, 40,000 fucking people. And CNN was not airing that because they were airing Donald Trump's empty podium. Remember that? Mm-hmm. So remember, right before he launched this war with Iran, you were reporting it. There was more information coming out about a essentially a teenager, we think age 13 to 15, who accused Trump of not just sexually assaulting her, but then physically assaulting her by basically slapping her in the face after sexually assaulting her. And that was buried, basically. The DOJ only released 1 out of 4 of the FBI's interviews with this woman. The one that they did release, she only talked about how Epstein sexually assaulted her. They hid the 3 other interview notes that talked about Trump. Then, as the media is finally covering that, and it took a while, first it started with an independent journalist, Roger Sollenberger, who deserves a lot of credit. Then NPR, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, I believe, they followed up on his reporting. I think they watered it down, but that's a different story. And before you know it, Trump is, launching World War III. You don't think Donald Trump would start a war to bury this? And as you reported, I'll hand it to you, not that her accusation has been confirmed, because in many ways, not that I'm saying I don't believe it, but in many ways, as of now, there's no way to really confirm it because she didn't document anything. Basically, the only other person who knew was her mother, who's since passed. But a local South Carolina report has confirmed pretty much everything else she claimed. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, anything that is publicly verifiable in those documents, a local South Carolina newspaper did some really great journalism and confirmed everything that is publicly available about her, meaning just she brings up, some people by name in her accounting. They confirm that these people exist and did have these like biographical details that she enumerates inside of her accounting. The newspaper says, yep, those all check out. They talk about she talks about how her mother faced some court challenges related to the abuse that she suffered at the hands of Epstein. And the South Carolina paper says, yes, these were actual court cases. These were charges that her mother faced. Talks about moving to Washington State and her mother out there. Yes, her mother was living at this assisted living facility. She talks about having met up with Jeffrey Epstein, or ran into him really, at a Rick James concert in Savannah, Georgia. And the newspaper is able to confirm, not necessarily that Jeffrey Epstein was at this Rick James concert, but that these concerts that Rick James was regularly performing in Savannah, Georgia at this time. So just every single turn of her story checks out. Whatever the parts that are confirmable are confirmed. It just lends more and more credence to her story. Though, again, it does not mean that what she says or what she accuses against Donald Trump is true. But it does show that, at least if you're, if you want to just like out and out call her a liar or a fabricator or something along those lines, you can't really find it in everything that can be, publicly verified in her story.
Well, there are things we can verify are true. Number one, the Donald Trump's DOJ hid 3 out of the 4 interviews with this accuser, and the ones they hid was her accusations against him. That's a fact.
Yep.
The only reason they came out is because journalists like Roger Sollenberger caught it, and then the mainstream rags caught up with him. Another thing that's true is the timing. Donald Trump launched a fucking war with Iran right when this was coming out. When he ran on no war with Iran, they didn't even do the George W. Bush, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell screw job of fake intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Hegseth didn't go to the UN claiming some bullshit. Vance, Trump, they didn't even have a reason. They didn't give a reason. It was just like, Israel was going to do it. And then they were a week away from a nuclear weapon. How were they a week away from a nuclear weapon when just last year you bombed Iran and you said you wiped out their whole stockpile?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing is, as my dearly departed grandma would say, fucking fakakta. She didn't say fuck. She didn't say fucking. She said fakakta. I also want to point out another element of this hacking story, and then we're going to move on to another Epstein thing. Quick detour. Welcome new Status Coup member Sam. If you came to this a little bit late, for the 1,000+ watching, tomorrow night is our members only call. 7:30 Eastern time, 4:30 Pacific. It's a perk for our paying members. And if you haven't been paying attention, We're taking a quick break to kind of regroup. But have you seen any independent outlet or independent journalist on the ground more than Status Coup in the last year? Have you seen any independent outlets on the ground, not, sitting casually drinking margaritas, getting gassed, getting shot by so-called less lethal bullets? JT with a newborn, well, not with the newborn.
Yeah. Left her at home, thankfully.
JT was on the ground for almost 2 months in Chicago. JT was on the ground on and off for almost 2 months in Minneapolis. John Farina might as well live on the road for us, okay? And we're not making the money that Gayle King is making for CBS. We're not making the money Andy Cooper is making over at CNN. And that's okay with us because we're actually doing real journalism. But the only way we could keep reporting on the ground, because it's not, right now it's a little calmer. It's not going to stay this way. We need to get back on the ground and we need to expand because, frankly, we're all fucking burnt out. We've all been working extremely long days. And during that Minneapolis surge, every one of us was working 7 days a week, 16, 17 hours a day. So if you can, obviously times are tough. If you can't support us financially, no problem. If you can, statuscoup.com/join. If you sign up today or tomorrow, you will get the video link to our members call. It's through a video program like Zoom. You don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. You could just listen, but you can be on camera if you choose. And it's a lot of fun. We take questions, comments, kind of go around. We have some folks who have been with us from the beginning in 2018 and some newer folks. I hope you join. Now, another element of this hacking story that I find interesting. I don't really know any hackers that just accidentally stumble on the FBI server. Reuters kind of reported it like this hacker didn't even know what he was doing or didn't know that it was the FBI. That's one hell of a coincidence. I'm not a technically advanced person, but I have a brain. That sounds very suspect to me that this hacker just kind of fell into the FBI server. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I also find it ridiculous for two reasons. One, as you're saying, the story by itself is just, kind of wild. I just want to read one paragraph that describes some of this, how this happened. So in the Reuters story, they say the person familiar with the breach said the intrusion was carried out by a foreign hacker who did not appear to realize they had penetrated a law enforcement server. The hacker expressed disgust at the presence of child abuse images on the device and left a message threatening to turn its owner over to the FBI. The person said, of course, the owner was the FBI, but that's the wild story, right? Of this guy doesn't know. And then he sees all of this child sexual abuse material and is now oh, I'm going to turn you into the FBI. And actually, and I won't read it verbatim, but ends up getting on a video call with some of the FBI agents at this New York office who then show the hacker their FBI credentials as a way to convince him oh, you wandered onto the FBI's servers. But there's a second reason that this is somewhat ridiculous. And this is something that goes unreported by Reuters here, but is available inside of the Epstein files. So this is actually a statement given by the FBI agent who, I won't say that the FBI found this agent at fault, but they were kind of at the center of the vulnerability that was created that allowed this hacker entrance into the server. And that agent testifies that, and this includes the Epstein files, by the way, 500 terabytes of data was gone as a result of the intrusion. I don't know how technically familiar people are with data sizes, but a terabyte is massive. If you have an external hard drive for your computer, it's probably 2 terabytes. And that can hold, hours upon hours of video, millions upon millions of documents. This was 500 terabytes that was gone. I was able to recover about 400 terabytes of that data, however. The rest of this statement, which is all that we have really about this particular data breach, makes no reference to if they were ever able to recover the other 100 terabytes of data that was lost here as part of this hack. And I'll also note that the size of the Epstein files is about 14.6 terabytes. That's all of the data that the FBI was able to gather. What they've released publicly is only about 300 gigabytes, or about 2% of the total data that they got as part of the Epstein investigation. So one of the big questions out of all of this is,
where the hell is all of this data? Jordan, you earlier referenced Roger Sollenberger's reporting where he found that there were all of these witness statements or these interview summaries that the FBI had done with that credible accuser against the president. The only reason we know that those statements even existed was because of really clever reporting that Roger Sollenberger did to actually see, like, he found a manifest that made reference to these, and then he was able to do some clever triangulating to figure out that these missing witness statements were for the credible Trump accuser. It's the only reason we know, is because he had the right sources and did a lot of really hard work. There could be a ton more that the FBI is sitting on and the Department of Justice is sitting on that we're not seeing, or maybe was accessed by a foreign hacker and potentially erased by a foreign hacker back in 2023. Like, this is now just a huge hole in the Epstein files. Like, so many questions that need answering here. I'm not surprised that the FBI is saying, we're not going to have any comment on this at this time, because there's no good answers.
And by the way, should point out, correct me on the number, there are still 37 pages of the accuser's interview.
Yeah, it's the FBI note. It's at least 37 pages of FBI notes on the interviews that they did with this credible Trump accuser that we know have not been released.
Right.
They've released the other interview summaries, but it's a far cry from all of the documents that just through, you can look at some of the metadata or really some of the serial numbers on these documents. You can figure out through algebra how much is still withheld. And we know that there's 37 pages still of that one accuser that we have not had released. And again, could be the tip of the iceberg.
So I want to move on to another Epstein story, but just to put a pin on this, I think it's important to note, you've pointed out, I mean, this is a shit ton of data, meaning a shit ton of pages, but you have to wonder, I mean, the Trump DOJ has said, basically there's millions of more documents that they're not going to release, which they haven't given a reason. You have to wonder, do they know specifically which files, which documents were taken by said hacker? And are those documents that they know the hacker has taken, or government, whichever one it is, are those the same as the ones they're not releasing? Meaning, what was hacked? Has some of that already been released, or is almost all of what was hacked what they're hiding? And if that's the case, which I'm going to go with door number 2, most of what was hacked is stuff they're not releasing. I mean, people have been talking about forever. Russia has something on Trump. Israel has something on Trump. Everybody has something on Trump. Could Trump be making policy or geopolitical decisions based on some hacker or government has potential crimes that implicate Trump and who knows who else? So he's going to do things basically that government would want. I know it sounds like an espionage thriller, but at the end of the day, this is not so far-fetched. I mean, when you're talking about a foreign government who has access to this, that could be some of what's happening. So before we move on to the next Epstein topic, we want to sprinkle in some of our recent on-the-ground reporting. If you're new here, as far as I know, we're one of the only independent, capital I, because we don't take money from the remaining Koch brother. We don't take money from United Healthcare, Goldman Sachs, Palantir, any of the corporate vultures purchasing the Democrats and Republicans. Our funding comes from you. And we have been on the ground recently. JT's been on the ground covering the Iran war protests, among other things. So we want to air some of those clips, and we'll talk about it after.
Like my cousin, he has a office in Tehran with his architectural firm, but he lives in Karaj. So basically, from what I understand, my mom has been in contact with our family in Iran. She says that everyone is okay for now, but the bombs are constantly dropping on both their cities. They're hitting many cities in Iran, but especially those two cities, Tehran and Karaj. And for example, one of my cousin Sudi, who lives in Karaj, they hit like a building or something on basically on her block. I think it might have been like one of the buildings or something like that, government building. I don't exactly know what it was, but essentially the impact of it was felt in every residential area and every building in the neighborhood of where the bomb was dropped, and the proximity of it was basically shaking. So that's how close like our families are to the bombing, to the targets that they're bombing.
With them being in such close proximity, I mean, what's the emotion inside of you, like when you see like the images on the news, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it is a wild experience as an Iranian American for the president of my country to bomb the cities of where my family is living and basically striking the soil that all four of my grandparents, who I was very close to, are buried under with my tax dollars. Very, very strange. And it's not an experience that I would really, wish upon anybody. So it's wrong. I'm opposed to it. I'm opposed to my country bombing my family's home country, and I'm opposed to, I'm opposed to my tax dollars paying for it.
JT, you want to kind of give us the context, some background on the vibe there? That was in Minneapolis? Or
Yeah,
Chicago?
yeah, that was in Minneapolis. It was just this past weekend for their anti-war protests. I was up there on a reporting trip and covered that anti-war demonstration that was happening inside of Minneapolis. And by the way, on the ground in Minneapolis, they are still taking to the streets every single day. I know it doesn't get, the Epstein stuff is being buried by the Iran war. And then beneath the Iran war and the Epstein files is still the invasion of Minneapolis, which continues apace, especially out in the suburbs, by the way. All these things still continue, but we continue to follow them here at Status Coup and do that important on-the-ground journalism. But they are standing up not just against the invasion of their own streets, but against their own country invading, a foreign nation, war for oil, forever war continuing across the Middle East. That gentleman was a speaker at that demonstration where the energy was still high out there in Minneapolis, despite weeks after weeks of this demonstrating out in just brutal weather conditions. And he had spoken quite emotionally about the fact that he had family living in Iran and what that's like to see his tax dollars and his government support the bombing of his own family abroad. And that was something I made sure to talk to him about after the fact. We did a longer interview with him, and wherein he also talked about, he addressed some of like the Iranian diaspora here in the United States that was initially cheering the strikes and the death of the Ayatollah. And he also put into perspective that, hey, that is not a universal feeling among the diaspora. I don't feel that way. And he also encouraged them he encouraged other Iranian Americans to think long term. He said, okay, yeah, I agree. Like the death of the Ayatollah is good, but what's next? Let's think down the line. How many more people are going to, endure pain and suffering as the result of a potentially failed Iranian state, or as the continued, bombings, if this war continues for weeks or months or, God forbid, years more? How many people are going to suffer as a result of that?
And I want to play one more clip again from our Iran war protests. We've covered protests in New York City, in Minneapolis, I believe Chicago. I could be wrong. We covered in Chicago too. And this is on top of all the ICE coverage we've done. For those of you who are new here, since June of last year, we have been on the ground reporting on Trump's ICE occupations, I believe ICE terrorism in Los Angeles. We were there for 2 weeks when Trump invaded LA. We've been in New York City. We were down at Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, which is still open, torturing people in significantly hot weather. We were in Chicago for 2 months, Charlotte for a week or so, and then Minneapolis for almost 2 months. We were there actually before the assassination of Renee Good. And obviously we stayed through the murder of Alex Preddy. We're still covering things on the ground there through a partnership with local Minneapolis journalist Andrew Mercado. And bottom line, I'm not beyond begging the people. People say, oh, Jordan, stop asking for money. Well, if we don't ask you for money, we don't keep the lights on. I'd much rather beg you than go beg corporations or sponsors or rich people. Because the minute you start going down that route, your coverage gets watered down. JT could tell you because he worked in corporate media. I could tell you because I worked in corporate media. So we are going to continue to ask you. No shame if you can't support us, because times are tough. Even for a lot of people, even another $5 a month to something, you can't do it. If you can't support us financially, no problem. Like, share, commenting really makes a difference. And I still believe word of mouth matters. Spread it. Spread Status Coup, because there is a void. There is not a lot of outlets that are on the ground in the trenches like us. But let's play one more clip from our protest coverage.
Illegal is the war for Israel, Netanyahu. It's just for the land, for kill innocent people. I have a family in Lebanon, but the South, they ask them to leave their land, their house.
What's your message to lawmakers who are failing to stop Trump?
We need to put them out in the next election. No more money from ABAC. If someone took the money for ABAC, have nothing to do with my government. Yes.
Who do you think is benefiting from this war?
The big corporation is for the oil, for the profit, for the gas, for everything. Have nothing to do with democracy. It's just money, money. And for Israel, it's more land, more land, more land.
What's your family talking about? How are they afraid?
Oh, yeah,
what are they feeling right now?
But I tried to text them, but they not answer for now. I don't know what happened. We try with WhatsApp, Facebook, and see what happened.
And you can't reach them?
For now, no. For now, no. Because they ask all the South Lebanon to leave.
And JT, I'll just say, and why this exists, and I think probably part of why you wanted to come here. Part of the value of doing these on-the-ground protests, and not just on Iran, but ICE, you're never going to see these voices. You're never going to hear these voices on CNN. You're not going to see them often quoted in the New York Times. You're definitely not going to see them on Joe Rogan or the Bro podcasts or the podcast sphere. If you want to hear from the people, like raw, authentic, the people, you got to come to places like Status Coup, because we're on the ground with the people. And I think that's the importance and that's the value of on the ground coverage. You know, it's not glamorous. We're not interviewing pundits and so-called experts. We're interviewing the people. And I can tell you, having worked in local media, I'm sure you too, when they do interview the people, and the rare times they do, they cut it down to 10 seconds and often take you out of context. Your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, that's the game of it. It's always just the soundbite mentality. It creates like basically a checklist in a local journalist's mind about what they need to get from a story before they move on. We saw it on display in Minneapolis, where we would go live out at some of these protests and we'd be out there for hours, showing it in its totality, where we'd watch like maybe a local or national TV camera show up. You could almost see them counting the cameramen in their heads of like, how many different shots of B-roll do I have? Do I have my 12-second soundbite? Yes. Okay, let's get out of the cold here and ignore the fact that this protest is going to continue on for 2 hours and it might involve police brutality at the end, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll just, play the 12-second clip that I got of, the protesters banging on a window. And then we can claim that they were, we can say both sides, like, yeah, what ICE is doing is bad, but these protesters are, look at, they're a little rowdy too. And here's one soundbite from them. Here's one soundbite from Greg Bovino. All right, fair, balanced. Yeah, you do the rest there at home and figure out, who's in the right on this. And it's lazy. And yeah, it's a big reason why I came to Status Coup. Absolutely.
All right, moving on. Smash that like button, share this live stream. There's more Epstein. Now, there's new investigations going on, not from the federal government, but New Mexico's government, as far as Epstein's ranch there. I think it's called the Zorro Ranch. It's been a whole lot of very, very alarming rumors. Obviously rape, but also potentially burying dead bodies of young girls. We'll get to that in a minute. But it was interesting to see James Comer, Republican, I believe he's chairman of the Oversight Committee or some committee. He was on Fox last night. I think he accidentally revealed that the Trump Department of Justice shut down the investigation of Epstein's ranch in its first term. Let's play that clip.
Sounds pretty sick if what's been said about it's true. What are you hearing? Well, I'm glad that the New Mexico authorities are going there and searching that property. I know that if no one searches the property, whenever this investigation is finally concluded, people are always going to have questions about whether or not there were deaths there, whether or not there were mysterious surgeries and things like that happening on the ranch. I don't know, but I do know this. The federal government asked New Mexico to stop their investigation, I believe back in 2019 of that ranch. So there's just so many questions about how the government failed the victims and how government failed in trying to prosecute Epstein sooner. I mean, this whole thing doesn't make sense. Everyone has conspiracy theories on, how Epstein was able to get away with it. Was it because he had, powerful friends? Yeah. Was it because he was an agent? No, we don't know, but we're going to find out. And I'm glad that they're on the ground now in New Mexico searching that property.
Congressman, you said in 2019 the government told New Mexico authorities to stand down investigating the ranch. Do you know what branch of the government?
It was the Department of Justice, I believe, and I believe it was because they I believe it perhaps was the Southern District of New York, because they had taken over the investigation at that point. So, again, these are questions that we have. We want to get the answers, but I will say publicly, I'm glad that the New Mexico authorities are on the ground searching that property. I don't know if there's anything there. I don't think anybody knows, but I do know this, Jesse. It's probably never been searched before very thoroughly.
That's crazy.
The house probably has, but the property hasn't.
So a couple things to the Fox News viewer, which includes my father and mother. God bless you. They tend to be older, so they might have a short memory. Donald Trump was president in the year 2019. It was his Department of Justice. And I would have loved to see the follow-up, because Jesse Waters there said, do you know which branch of government? The next question asked to him should have been, do you know who is president in 2019? It's interesting that these things got shut down in 2019. JT, just to give you a little behind the scenes here to the audience, JT and I were texting the other night about something. And I said, journalistically, you always got to look at the timeline. When something happens, what else was happening at the same time? Now, what was going on in 2019 when they shut down this investigation, Trump's Department of Justice? Well, in June, I don't know specifically when the DOJ shut this investigation down, but 2019. Okay. In June, Donald Trump met with then Prince Andrew during a visit to the United Kingdom. Well, Prince Andrew is one of the most exposed of anybody in terms of the Epstein trafficking ring because of his disgusting illegal behavior, which he's now been arrested in the UK. Interestingly enough, not for sexual assault, but for potentially trading or leaking, private UK government documents. Now, Trump meets with Prince Andrew in June of 2019. Then journalist, I say journalist loosely, Michael Wolff comes out with a book in June of 2019. I think it's called Siege, where it has a lot of information on Trump and Epstein's relationship, including Trump's money laundering, potentially through Russia, the falling out they had over Trump and a property he basically stole from underneath Epstein, and some other stuff about Trump and Epstein having close ties. 3 weeks later, Jeffrey Epstein is arrested. Mm-hmm. Well, as I pointed out to you when we were texting the other day, Trump was president from 2017 to 2020 the first time. His DOJ had all the information they used to prosecute and arrest Jeffrey Epstein. They had it years prior. So why did they arrest him in July 2019, a month after Trump met with Prince Andrew, and weeks after this book comes out that is revealing details about Trump and Epstein? By the way, Michael Wolff claims that Epstein kind of got cold feet after the book came out. Like, I think I told you too much. They might come after me. Then he's arrested. Then, I mean, we could keep going down the list, but then a prison psychologist, her notes say he's not suicidal a month before he's found dead from suicide. 2 weeks before, a prison psychologist in the notes say not suicidal. He was, I mean, I've been open. I had suicidal thoughts about a decade ago. He was more agitated that he wasn't getting a constipation medication in prison. He was almost taunting the psychiatrist. I would never kill myself. And he was excited for his bail hearing. Then he's found dead. And there's a lot of strange things with that, as we've been reporting. I'll be direct. I don't think he committed suicide. And at this point, I think it's a conspiracy theory to say he committed suicide based on all the evidence. And now you have Trump's DOJ that same year shuts down an investigation of his New Mexico ranch, which, let's read from Julie K. Brown. She is the Epstein journalist. She broke the Epstein story really the second time after his first arrest. She's the reason I think that he was arrested the second time. But here's from her Substack. We don't have the whole thing, but dead bodies and a long missing 300-year-old death bell. What will they find on Zorro Ranch? New documents show the DOJ had several paths to search Epstein's ranch, but didn't do so. The reach of the mysteries involving Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico now spans several centuries. As new documents reveal, the FBI's Albuquerque office was investigating whether Epstein had a stolen historical artifact that dates back hundreds of years stored on his sprawling New Mexico property. The artifact was a, quote, death bell that was once housed at the San Jose de Gracia Mission Church in Las Trampas, a village in northern New Mexico between Santa Fe and Taos. The church was built in 1760 and is considered one of the best examples of Spanish colonial architecture in the Southwest U.S. It's also a National Historic Landmark. The lore about the missing church bell only adds to the questions about why the Justice Department never searched Epstein's ranch in 2019, when at least 2 victims alleged they were sexually assaulted there, and another tipster claimed that 2 girls' bodies are possibly buried there. Now, JT,
It's disgusting.
I know our former bosses in corporate media would tell you got to be neutral robots. Don't give your opinion. Rubbish.
No.
All I know is if you have the premier blackmailer in the world, Jeffrey Epstein, this is not opinion, this is fact. He basically made his money by getting enough, what do they call it? Compromat on financiers, celebrities, politicians to hold devastating things over their head. Well, it seems through the Epstein files, he had something over Trump. And then Trump is shutting down an investigation into Epstein's booby trap, potentially dead girls buried there. Seems pretty suspicious to me.
Yeah, the best case scenario for the Trump administration, like the best version of this story for them, is that this is fucking incompetence, right? Is that they shut this investigation down or a search of the Zorro Ranch purely because they were incompetent at investigating Jeffrey Epstein. But I don't see how you can conclude that it was just incompetence if, once you start to add everything on here, the way that Donald Trump has conducted himself around Jeffrey Epstein, even refusing to tell people close to him. Donald Trump, who is this notorious gossip in journalistic circles, he is known to love to chitter chatter with everybody and talk a lot of shit and give and get that behind the scenes kind of talk going, but he won't tell anyone, not even those closest to him, why he wants to bury the Epstein story so badly. He won't explicitly tell anyone, even in his inner circle. So I don't understand how you can conclude that it is incompetence when Donald Trump seems to care about this so much that he plays this one so close to the chest that he won't even disclose it to like his closest advisors why he cares so much about this story, and then shuts down an investigation of Epstein's ranch, in addition to all of the other failed leads that, as the Epstein files come out, are clearly like just so many investigations that never went forward, including, of course, most notably, of any of the identified co-conspirators inside of the Epstein files.
And I think, and sometimes we have to borrow reporting from our audience, because somebody just reminded me, who was his attorney general? Bill Barr. Bill Barr, his father, was the one who hired Jeffrey Epstein at the prestigious Dalton School.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Epstein, who was not a teacher. I believe had no teaching degree.
Yeah, he had never even graduated college. But he somehow got this teaching job at the Dalton School.
And Bill Barr was the one who immediately killed himself. DOJ, mission accomplished, nothing to see here. And as you will see, I mentioned it at the beginning of the live stream, we're going to have a story, I'm hoping tomorrow, because I interviewed Dr. Michael Bodden for about 20 minutes. He was the pretty famous autopsy doctor. He didn't do the autopsy on Epstein, but he was there. He observed it because Epstein's brother requested him. There's a lot more smoke than even I knew related to that autopsy and the suicide. But William Barr, his DOJ, basically determined that Epstein killed himself, even though a lot of strange things were going on. Guards falling asleep at the same time. Cameras not working. The Epstein files showed that they kind of like created a booby trap diversion vehicle where they put a sheet over a bunch of boxes so the media would think it was Epstein's body and put Epstein in a different car. Just a lot of strange things. But I got to say, at the end of the day, it's in independent media, JT, it's more profitable to just put a blue hat on or a red hat. Mm-hmm. Just say they're all corrupt. And as much as we're focused on Donald Trump, I have to take a quick detour. The Biden administration deserves some blame here too.
Yep.
Trump administration shut all this down. Well, Joe Biden had a Department of Justice. In fairness, Biden came in, was dealing with COVID, a lot of other things. So you could only do so much, but it's not like his administration, unless the Trump DOJ like burned documents and hid all this in a locked box, which if that happened, that's a different level of scandal. It's not like Biden's DOJ, Biden's FBI didn't have access. If the Trump DOJ, if the Trump FBI trying to cover this up, that the Biden DOJ, FBI couldn't have picked this back up. And from what we know, they didn't do a damn thing either. So, there's different levels and different levels of the villains here. I would put Trump and his people higher, but this sat under a Democratic administration too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's absolutely no excuse for the Biden administration to not have released these files. And in fact, you see a lot of people in MAGA right now claiming that if there was anything really damning about Donald Trump and the Epstein files, Joe Biden's Justice Department would have released it. And the only reason they can make that claim is because Joe Biden's Justice Department never acted. Merrick Garland never acted. They never released these files. And when you talk about, that red hat versus blue hat version of reporting, I would point out that there are people in the files who are implicated, people like Leon Black, who were prolific donors to the Democratic Party, giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to Democratic PACs and candidates that perhaps could have also played a role there. If you're gonna, draw the conclusions yourself from the Epstein files on the Republican side, you've got to be willing to do it on the Democratic side too. And that is clearly that there was an incestuous cabal here of a billionaire class that conspired to really put the pressure on people in positions of power not to release these documents and to continue not to release these documents. Leon Black right now is suing a law firm that tried to represent people who were claiming to be victims of Leon Black who were trafficked to him by Jeffrey Epstein. That's the claim. And he is still undertaking some of those actions to try and keep some of these voices quiet. So I think you have to acknowledge the role of the powerful and the moneyed here.
And I got to respond to this one with respect to our audience member. Not trying to knock you down, but this is a bunch of bullshit. I've heard this talking point. Well, Biden couldn't release them because the Maxwell case was in the courts. As JT has noted, you're talking about potentially tens of millions of documents. They all did not relate or pertain to Ghislaine Maxwell's case. I have covered criminal investigations. If you're new here, I have covered Flint, the water crisis and cover up for a decade now. By the way, the water is still fucked up in Flint 12 years later. Nobody covers that either. Still working on that. stand by for more news on that. So, at the end of the day, there is information having nothing to do with Ghislaine Maxwell, having nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein in these Epstein files that could have been released, not tainting, not relevant at all to her trial. So I don't buy that for a second that, well, they couldn't have because Ghislaine Maxwell was on trial. Come on. You really believe that? That's a Democratic Party talking point. And by the way, there's a lot of these Democratic Party officials who might sincerely now care. They didn't seem to sincerely now care when the victims were begging Democrats, Republicans, media figures to do something about this. Let's also not let the media off the hook here. ABC News, Google it. There was a clip of anchor Amy Robach. She was an anchor at ABC. Not sure if she's still there. She didn't know she was still on a hot mic, and she was ranting to her producers because she had the Epstein story. She had parts of the Epstein story, I believe, like a decade ago, and ABC killed the story. We know that the New York Times was pitched key details on Epstein and some of these accusers, this and that. They passed. Now, sometimes you say tomato, I say tomato. Something I think is a big story, a media outlet might not. That's the push and pull between freelance journalists who pitch stuff to editors and just people who pitch stuff to media outlets, and they pass. But these are relatively big things for major media outlets, way more well-resourced than little old status coup to have passed on. You have to wonder why some of these outlets passed on this type of reporting. So obviously Trump is the big fish here, and we're going to focus on him, but let's not let, because you hate Trump, don't have blinders on and let the Democratic Party have a pass. We're not going to do that here. If you don't like it, too bad. Now, lastly, on Epstein, because I kind of, said at the beginning, some people, I think Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk is calling this the Epstein War.
Yeah.
I kind of inferred that. Well, there's now polling. Apparently, the majority of Americans agree that Donald Trump basically launched the Iran war to distract from the Epstein files. Credit to Drop Site News, Zeteo, who partnered with Data for Progress, which is a polling group, to issue this poll, if you have it, Colin. But new poll, majority of Americans believe Trump launched Iran war to cover up the Epstein scandal, which, by the way, you will not see this poll taken or even this question asked by a major media outlet. You have to rely on independent media, which Drop Site News, Zeteo would fall in that category, to pose this question. By the way, polling is expensive to do, to conduct polling. So good on them. But let's go down, Colin, to the actual chart with the polling numbers. I think it's midway through the story to show the actual results here. Keep going. So all likely voters, 52%, believe Trump took this military action to distract from Epstein. I get 8% don't know, so that's a majority. Democrats, unsurprisingly, 81% believe this is basically a war of distraction. Independents, which, you ask anybody in the know about politics, specifically presidential elections, midterms, if you gotta do well with independents to win major elections. Trump won re-election the second time because he overperformed with independents. A lot of independents who aren't diehard politicos just said, hey, you know what? I might not like him, but prices were lower under him. I'll give him another try. Obviously, a lot of them are regretting it now since Trump is sinking like the Titanic in polling. And even 26% of Republicans, which surprised me. I was expecting this to be lower. 26% of the Republicans think their man launched this war to avoid to distract from Epstein. I got to tell you, JT, I think so many abnormal things have become normalized under Donald Trump. But let's just stop for a second. Even the thought that this president is basically wagging the dog, that's the term here, launching a war just either to stay in power or, cover up a scandal, even that this has to be asked, even that this is thought by, in this case, a majority of Americans, that should give you serious pause that this man should be president, that he is willing to start a war. I mean, we're an hour into the show. We have not yet mentioned, which is bad on me, almost 200 people, most of whom were schoolgirls, died because the United States bombed an elementary school in Iran.
Yeah, and then the president has the gall to try and insinuate that it's Iran that actually did it, even though we're the only ones with the type of missile that was used in that strike.
Right. So
only ones in this.
The bottom line is, can you imagine if it was Biden who launched the war and or Obama to, like, I don't know, cover up an affair or some? I mean, fucking Fox News would be calling for the death penalty. And this is just kind of assumed. And they still, we're 2 weeks in, they still have not given a coherent reason for doing this. And by the way, the damage is done. I'm not like, I don't pretend to be a foreign policy expert. Mostly we cover domestic stuff here. But even if he said mission accomplished today and stopped, the damage is done. Oil prices are, gas is not going to go lower right away. There's been damage to consumers here, shipping lanes, obviously infrastructure in Iran, in Gulf states. A lot of Gulf states that Trump has corrupt business deals with have backed out or saying we're not going to invest any more money in America. There is a big, big domino effect here that it doesn't matter if Trump, pulls out, so to speak, quickly. And by the way, you don't have to be an expert, JT. How was ISIS formed? Because we started a war for no reason based on lies in Iraq.
Yep, destabilized the Middle East and gave them a power vacuum that they filled. And who's to say that the same thing won't happen with Iran? But I want to call out here, Jordan, that Donald Trump, like, even though that polling shows like Americans recognize what Donald Trump is doing, that doesn't necessarily, and that's heartening, I suppose. It does not mean that what he's doing is not working. I've seen this floating around on Twitter, but the Google Trends for search results for this blue line here is search results for Epstein. And as you can see, in February, when a lot of the files come out, its search interest really peaks there. This red line is for Iran. And you see when the war starts, search interest in Iran skyrockets and the Epstein story really zeroes out. So he is doing a good job of actually keeping it out of sight, out of mind in terms of the Epstein files. So I guess you at least, I don't know if you want to say you got to hand it to him, but at least, I mean, it's fucking working that this, the media environment in which we exist right now, where it's constantly chasing the bright, shiny object, or we're incapable of just, centering a story and continuing to report on it. Most media outlets seem to be incapable of this, of just like continuously like doing that rigorous journalism to keep a story that is, should be at front of mind for most Americans, just completely, taking our eyes off the ball here. Thankfully, we're not at status quo, but like that just goes to show like this kind of distraction game, just endangering the lives of millions of people, works. It works if you want people to stop talking about your associations to a convicted pedophile.
And I also want to point something out, because I just mentioned how was ISIS formed? Because this government and this media is not capable of long-term thinking, nor is corporate America. They only care about the next 3 months and their quarterly profits. But ISIS was formed, like I said, by, W's cowboy adventures around the world, specifically in the Middle East, which radicalized people. I'm not defending terrorism, but there's a reason they get radicalized. We killed and maimed 1 million brown people in the Middle East through Iraq. Now, we've already seen radicalization. We covered, John Farina, who, by the way, deserves 10 awards. Mm-hmm. It's a sin that he hasn't won awards. John Farina is our cameraman. For those of you that don't know, He is the one who got that historic image on January 6th of Capitol Police Officer Daniel Hodges' face rammed into the door. I'm mad at myself that I sold it to CNN and these others for far, far too cheap. I was not in the know back then about how much I could have gotten for that, because we could have got a whole lot more and we would have been able to hire a lot more. Anyway, he got that historic footage. He 6 years later still has pain in his ribs from the Trump mob crushing him, but he still got that shot. John has been gassed covering ICE. He has been shot at with so-called less lethals. You've seen it because you've been out with him.
Yep.
And he was just out on Saturday because right-wing bigot and extremist Jake Lang had a Stop the Islamic Takeover rally outside New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's office, mansion in New York City. And we wouldn't be covering Jake Lang or these right-wingers if there wasn't counter-protesters, because we don't need to give them attention. But obviously we want to cover if people are coming out to protest this hatred. Well, John covered it and was literally feet away from a failed bomb attempt. Let me repeat. Our cameraman was feet away from two individuals who are now in custody who, thank God, failed to detonate homemade bombs. We don't have all the footage because it was very, spur of the moment. And he didn't even notice it until he turned around. But we have some of it. Let's show you that.
That's a QC. Make America great again. Yeah. Look at that. So please, guys, please help yourself. No, not yet. When we get over to the mansion. Oh, all right. She looks American. Not yet. So you edible though. Oh, it's great. Oh, he's got his gone. Free the code! Free the code! Back up! Don't do that, bro. We ain't throw shit. We got two of them. Why are you trying to stop us from filming this? See, they're ready for me. You can get them on my name. You saw what I did?
It's escalated now. Well, we told you the first time, you never believed us.
So the full video is up, but we're showing that for a few reasons. Number one, and this is not for self-promotional purposes, but it's just true. In an open society, and specifically when you go cover protests with a lot of people, you really don't know what's going to happen. You really don't know who is coming to these protests, even if the protests, the stated purpose of the protests are good. John, he and I have talked about it several times, but at January 6th, when he was covering it, we were the first ones live on January 6th on Capitol Hill, and these assholes at YouTube took our live stream down. That's another topic, which I'll get into another day. But he said, honestly, it was tough because I had to focus on getting the shot while also keep scanning because he didn't know if people had guns and we're going to start shooting. Like, that's what's going on when you're a reporter, an independent journalist on the ground from these things. I'm sure you could talk about some, particularly the day Alex Preddy
got shot. Yeah.
Got shot. You were live for 4 hours after. It looked like fucking Fallujah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to you after, I didn't even give you the chance. I said, you're going home after. Because I was actually thinking, I don't try to pull rank, but technically as your boss, like I was even thinking of calling you guys and telling you to shut it down. Because I had not, other than Standing Rock, which I covered on the ground in North Dakota, it started to dawn on me like they might start shooting real bullets, the police.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we wanted to show that clip for two reasons. Number one, to make the point, the radicalization is already happening as a result of Trump's war. The two people they arrested, they drove up from Pennsylvania, the two people who tried to detonate these homemade bombs. And they say that they were inspired by ISIS. Well, they came up after Trump launched a war with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
So the damage is done. That's my point. Even if Trump ended it today, this is giving a golden opportunity for new recruitment to people who want to do harm on America and Israel, by the way. And the second thing, and I'll just directly say it, we take risks to do this. I haven't been on the ground as much recently. I got two young kids, so I've taken a lot of risks. But directly right now, JT and John are the ones on the ground, and it's risky. We're not like going to cover just carnivals or whatever local news covers. We're going to cover a lot of protests. We've covered a lot of right-wing extremism. Tina Desiree Berg, who does stuff for us, she was in Minneapolis for us. She's the queen of covering these right-wing extremists. We've covered Proud Boys. We've covered Oath Keepers. She's gone to cover some of these hate rallies, not because we want to elevate it, but because we think it's important to show you what's truly happening. So, most importantly, I'm very thankful, not just for John, but everybody who was there. Because even if one of those things, if one of those things went off where John was standing, it's very, I don't even want to say it, but it's very, very unlikely we would be having a good conversation after. It's very likely something bad would have happened. So I hope, you guys understand we're asking you to support us, not just for the independent journalism, but because this is risky work. And it's also, JT, I don't want to speak for you. It's not just physically risky. It's mentally, it takes a toll on us.
Yeah, it does. I've been pretty open in the past with people who ask me about like the toll that it takes, but it's something that puts you in a real bad state of mind. I mean, we talked the night that Alex Preddy got shot about how, the only thought going through my mind that entire, 4 hours that we're out there is as the feds are just shooting off around like wave after wave of these non-lethal munitions that, we're really hurting people, just hours after, minutes after they had just gunned down somebody in the street. And the only thought going through my head through all that is like, I got to get home to my daughter. I got to get home to my wife. They need, that I can't let her grow up without a father if I can help it. So, and that thought playing on loop in your head, it does take an emotional toll on you. I won't really like reveal like the behind the scenes stuff of what John and I were like after that, but suffice to say, like we were not in a good place. I think we were great. We were both grateful to have the break after the fact, but it really wears on you. I referenced earlier being on a new medication that's making me sleepy for the stream. Like that's an SSRI, like to treat like some of the things that you deal with out in the job. You do it because you love it, and
straight up, people have asked me for 10 years, how do you do this? I'm kind of joking, but I'm not. Whiskey and antidepressants. It's not particularly healthy, the first one, but sometimes, particularly when you're on the road on tough stories, at the end of the day, that's for me what takes the edge off. Go on.
Yeah, I don't know if there was really any point that I was driving at there other than to just kind of peek behind the curtain at the toll that this work does. We, it's always awkward for journalists. We don't like to make ourselves the center of the story. When I went to interview Roger Sollenberger about his Epstein file work recently, like that was like he initially told me no, that he didn't want to be the center of the story, and then kind of felt compelled that he had to come out and talk about it once it got like to a certain level of national prominence. But like that's our initial inclination. So just recognize that we're very embarrassed anytime we do have to do this, like telling you like what it's like for us there on the ground, or even like to do things like hawking memberships. But like I'd rather be doing that than, taking corporate dollars for ads for toothpaste or whatever, whoever might have, the ability to shut down the work that we're doing, or to pressure us to talk about certain subjects, or maybe to say, hey, don't talk about those Epstein files so much, that kind of thing. So I'd rather.
And I will say two things. And we'll say more tomorrow night on our members call. Hint, hint, sign up. Statuscoup.com/join, 7:30 Eastern tomorrow night, 4:30 Pacific. Our members only call where we reveal a whole lot more behind the scenes. But I'll say two things. Number one, a couple of years ago, and I've told this to most of the to old Status Coup viewers, but for those of you who are new, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I had an offer for a significant amount of money to invest in Status Coup. Total disclosure, it was $600,000. I don't know if I ever told you this, JT, but I had an offer for $600,000, which in the grand scheme of things isn't enough to build a media empire, but it's enough to hire like a decent staff of 7 to 10 people plus travel. I wouldn't have to work 7 days a week, which at that time was what I was doing. And I'm human, so it was tempting. But at the end of the day, I turned it down because this person, who I don't think is a horrible person, but he was a very wealthy Democratic Party donor, he would not put in writing that I would maintain editorial control. He kind of waxed and waned and said, well, you know, if you don't trust me, we shouldn't do this. I said, I don't trust anyone unless it's in writing. That's what I said. And I said, it shouldn't be a big deal to you. You put it in writing. If your goal here is not to try and neuter this. Long story short, I turned it down. And there are days that I look back and, you know, sometimes you have kind of remorse because it's like, fuck, man, I'm literally working myself sick. And I'll talk about this more on the members call tomorrow, because you guys might have seen me less on air recently, but I've actually been working more off air behind the scenes because we're growing and I've had to run this growth. But long story short, we have turned down shortcuts in order to do this the right way, is my point. And it is a lot harder. You know, I'm not knocking channels that take corporate. Well, in a way I am. I'm not saying they're horrible for doing corporate ad reads and things like that. Everybody has their different model and is comfortable with different things. But for us, we're either going to do this the right way or we're not going to do it at all. It's not to say we'll never do ads if those ads align with who we are, but we're not going to be doing ads for United Healthcare. Let's put it that way. And we're not going to, you know, be funded by George Soros or the Koch brother or name whomever. So the other thing I'll say, and I said this to you when I interviewed you, I call it a digital diarrhea. Okay. There's way too many channels out there. Most of them are talking about the same goddamn thing. A lot of it's just shock jock reactionary bullshit. Most of them honestly don't even know what they're talking about. Don't even do much research and kind of just go for the lowest common denominator reactionary nonsense because they know that's what YouTube will elevate. Most of them do it from their home, which I'm not knocking because you don't have to go on the ground. You know, there's plenty of value. Some of my favorite channels are, you know, commentators who do it from a studio. So I'm not knocking that. But my point is there is an ample sea of podcasters, you know, YouTubers, TikTokers now, people with podcasts. There's not an ample sea of actual living, breathing, independent journalists out there rolling up their sleeves with the people, taking risks. So that's why we ask you to support us, statuscoup.com/join. All right. Real quick, let's detour. We want to get to some of this ICE stuff because shocker, JT, and I will read, by the way, we'll read all the new members at the end of this and super chats. Shocker, after nearly a year-long terror campaign that the Trump administration and Trump has waged on the streets of America, Los Angeles, D.C. with the National Guard, New York City at the federal courthouse. We've seen politicians attacked. We've seen immigrants attacked. Alligator Alcatraz, the Dilley Detention Center in Texas, which we just posted on our Substack this morning. Our producer, Michelle Dow, did a great interview with an attorney based on, if you remember last year, the Colorado firebomber who tried to bomb a pro-Israel rally. Trump has kept his innocent family, wife and 5 children, in a torture prison in Texas. So we did an interview on that. That's up on our Substack, which, by the way, you could sign up to our Substack for free. That's statusquosubstack.com, statusquosubstack.com, where we post a lot of our investigative reporting. Chicago, Charlotte, Minneapolis, they've basically launched a fascist terror campaign, which we have covered, I'm proud to say, more than anyone. But now, not making this up, White House tells House Republicans to stop talking about mass deportations. Let me repeat that. The White House tells House Republicans, stop talking about mass deportations. Colin, I don't know if you have the actual article. I'm going to read from it. There we go. This is from Axios. White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair privately urged House Republicans on Tuesday to stop emphasizing mass deportations and instead focus their messaging on removing violent criminals, according to sources. Nearly half, 49% of Americans say Trump's mass deportations campaign is too aggressive. Well, I'll read a little bit more, even though we can't show it to you. Blair delivered the message during a policy listening session with House Republicans. He encouraged members to focus on deporting violent offenders rather than defending the broader concept of mass removals. As the guy who's been on the ground with John, certainly more than me covering this, your thoughts on now, I guess, the buyer's remorse of their terror campaign?
I mean, I guess it's good, right, that at least rhetorically they're going to change what they're talking about. But I mean, color me skeptical that it'll actually change what it's like on the ground for these communities that are still fucking terrified after being, feeling compelled to be locked inside of their homes for weeks and months on end because you feel like stepping out your door, you might be victimized just based on the color of your skin or the neighborhood in which you happen to live. We'll see. I am also now somewhat worried about what the ratchet effect to the right is going to happen because of this, where, I don't know that the Republican Party can really put the rabbit back in the hat here after what it has done, because you've already seen like the true neo-Nazis in this country, the Nick Fuenteses of the world, already out there claiming that, see, this is why, you should never have been why we couldn't support Trump anyway. You need something even further to the right than his vision. And I suspect, based on what has happened in this country politically over the last decade, the only indication to me is that the Republican Party is going to continue to self-radicalize based off of this. So if the Republicans think that they can just like change the messaging and then all of a sudden this like bloodlust is going to go away in their base, you have made this bed and now you're trying not to lie in it here. I don't think that their Republican base is really going to stomach this kind of reversal of course. There are some Republicans, and I interviewed some on the ground in Chicago and in Minneapolis, who expressed regret for their vote for Trump because they feel like his immigration policy has gone too far or has victimized people that they thought it wouldn't. But there's still going to be a large chunk of that base that is still supportive of this mass deportation campaign, and if anything, wants to see something more. So that's what I am perennially concerned about, and will remain concerned until there is ever this really proven moment that the Republican Party can moderate in any way. But I am just not hopeful at this point. I usually try to be an optimist on this program and on a lot of things, but on this point, I don't think that I can be. That really all we should expect to see on this is further radicalization, and I almost like shudder to start to game out in my mind where that can really go, because I think it takes us to some truly dark places in this country. If you talk about a Republican Party, at least even on just the immigration issue, is even further to the right than where it is. I mean, that is a truly disgusting vision for this country that I shudder to really think about in detail.
Yeah, I'm still working on you. I want to strip that optimism out of you and just darken your heart. I have almost 10 years on you, so we'll get there. We'll get there. Right. I was an optimist when I was 31 too. So, I also want to point out, and you could maybe add some reporting to this because you were just in Minneapolis last weekend. I think it's important to note, because the media is just this is what the media does. They parachute into places when it's crazy and, there's gas and, violence, and then they don't give a fuck after. But we've actually stayed on it. And we don't have anything to announce right now, but we are working behind the scenes on a town hall that we're going to host in Minneapolis, kind of like after the surge, to show you the lasting damage that has been done to the people. But I want to point out that story is about messaging. The Trump White House is telling Republicans to stop talking about mass deportations. It's still actually happening on the ground in Minneapolis.
Yes.
And the violence that ICE is doing is still happening. The only difference between, Emperor Bravino and his wild, wild west, just do it in the middle of the street, and Tom Homan is doing it more strategically. Can you kind of talk about some of that reporting, JT? Because you've learned some of the new techniques they've been using. They're still arresting people with no due process. They're still being violent towards immigrants and citizens. They're just doing it basically a lot quieter in Minneapolis right now.
Yes. The way that they have changed up their operations. By the way, they're still, like, as an illustration, I was just like yesterday, getting picture messages from a source that was just like more SUVs being shipped in by the truckload into the federal Whipple building where ICE is headquartering much of its operations, just to show you that they have hundreds of cars in their parking lot that they use for these immigration enforcement operations. They're still bringing in more as a sign that they are still on the ground there.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I always want to note this because it gets lost. The federal building that they chose to have this ICE prison is the site of a former Native American concentration camp.
Yes.
I want to make that clear because the media doesn't report that. The Whipple building was basically Fort Snelling, where in the 19th century, 1800s, they housed Native Americans who they tortured. So go on.
Yes. And really the only change that has been very effective from Tom Homan's perspective, I would imagine, is that they have really just relaxed on the targeting of people living in Minneapolis. And that is because the citizens of Minneapolis were some of the most well-organized of those rapid response groups, those resistance groups that had cropped up to monitor ICE activity and what they were doing. So when ICE would go into a Minneapolis neighborhood, they were getting the strongest pushback there in the city of Minneapolis. Not to say that the other, surrounding communities weren't doing that rapid response work. They were, but Minneapolis was just able to get more people out, usually faster. And that, usually created a lot more opportunities for confrontation with the agents, these viral moments that you've seen on your social media feeds of people being violently disappeared, dragged into federal vehicles, unmarked vehicles by masked men. A lot of that was happening in the city of Minneapolis. And instead, what they have done is shifted their operations out to the surrounding suburbs and focusing a little bit more on St. Paul, where there was no rapid response network, but less of a rapid response network. And they've also been operating out of office buildings in some of these suburbs. So that way it made their operations harder to track, because what the rapid response networks were doing was keeping an eye on the federal Whipple building there at Fort Snelling. And you could see when vehicles would leave and you would know, okay, some federal agents are going out on a mission right now. I will notify the rapid response groups to be on the lookout that, some federal agents just left. Well, now that they're operating out of these satellite offices, it's more offices that any rapid response network would need to monitor. So it divides their attention in that way, and also makes it so that the ICE agents can have shorter distances to travel, meaning less opportunity for them to be recognized on the roadways as they go out to these targets out in the suburbs, where it's also a population that is more spread out. It's harder for people to come together quickly, to rally around and resist the Trump administration in these neighborhoods. So these operations are still very much in effect in the Twin Cities area. It's just that they've decreased the emphasis on Minneapolis. And then also the Trump administration, of course, just doing this change in rhetoric with Tom Homan going out there repeatedly and saying, we're really only focused on criminals now, et cetera, regardless of whether or not that is true. The effect that it has had on the ground is kind of this opportunity for a lot of people, and I've heard this from people in the rapid response groups, a lot of people who were doing rapid response work kind of used that as an opportunity to, oh, okay, I can finally take a breather after being on the edge of my seat for 2 months, wondering if it was going to be me or a friend or a neighbor who was going to be shot dead in the street next. I can stop going to protests. I can stop doing this rapid response work, give myself a little bit of a break. And it has had also then just a dampening effect on the rapid response work. But all of that same, reign of terror, all that same work is still going on in Minneapolis and in Chicago too, by the way, because I've been talking to activists out there, and ICE operations continue out in Chicago, even months after Operation Midway Blitz ended.
And I also want to note, if you're a student of Trumpism and Trump himself, you got to remember, Trump is like a pendulum. It often is inconsistent. I don't know if that's the right analogy. Or seesaw, it kind of goes both ways. Trump sometimes calms down, scales back, and then ramps up again. And Trump's North Star, which I think is wrong, he did this in 2020. He miscalculated that he could just act like a crazy person during a once-in-a-century pandemic and just rev up his base, because he always thought, if I just rev up the base enough, they'll come out and we'll win. Well, he lost. Although I do have to remind you, Biden actually did not win by that much in 2020. A lot of Democrats kind of remember it the wrong way, that it was a landslide. It was not a landslide. But, and I think if Trump didn't badly mismanage COVID, I think he actually would have beat Biden. But that's neither here or there. Point being, it's not beyond the possibility that Trump could ramp up this ICE terror again to distract again from the Epstein files, or because he wrongly thinks it'll be a winner to rev up his base around the midterms. You had reporting that a lot of people in Chicago thought that ICE was going to scale back there during the harsh winter months and then scale back up around spring, which we're headed into that. Mm-hmm. There's even been talk that he could just go right at New York City, because the media would cover that, because that's their backyard. Yep. And he's kind of had this love affair with Zoran Mamdani, but how long do you think that's going to last? So I don't think this ICE terror is over. It might not look like it looked in Minneapolis, but it's not over, and that's why we're staying on it. And we should also point out, which hasn't gotten enough attention, JT, there's now an increasing number of people dying in these ICE prisons. Yep. Every week you hear about more people dying in ICE prisons. And for those of you that don't know, we'll talk about this more on the members call tomorrow night. Hint, hint, statuscoup.com/join. We are actually working on a documentary based off our Minneapolis ICE coverage. We're trying to get it out quickly, because obviously we don't want to lose the focus on ICE, but you can't rush a documentary. It takes a while, but our producer Michelle is working on that. We probably have enough footage to fill a digital museum at this point. So she's hard at work on a documentary. We're hoping to have that sometime in April or May. If, right now we're exploring different options, trying to get it potentially picked up by streamers or, bigger platforms. So we'll see. All right. Before we wrap up, a couple public service announcements here. We already went through the members only call. Colin, if you could come on for a second, just because I don't know the tech and you do. For people who are already members, how will they get the link to join the members call tomorrow? And for people that are not yet members, how do they sign up? And then how will they get the video link for the members call tomorrow?
Yeah, obviously to sign up, just do the statuscoup.com/join there and do the whole sign up process. And as long as you become a member, then you'll get an email at whatever email you signed up with the link to the members call and all that stuff. You can also, if you're not already, when you're on the member page, once you join, you can also join our Discord, and I also post the link there as well for the meeting. Everyone else, whatever platform you're on, whether you're supporting us through YouTube or Patreon or Substack, the link for the meeting will be posted directly in the feed. So just keep an eye on the feed. I usually post about an hour or so before the thing starts, so about 6:30 EST.
And that, by the way, if you're on YouTube, if you're a member through YouTube, that would mean you'd get it in the community post. Is that right?
Yeah, you'll if you're a member, you'll probably just see it in your normal subscriptions feed. But if not, just go to the Status Coup community, and you'll see the post there. If you have any issues during it, I'll reiterate this again tomorrow, but just email info@statuscoup.com and we'll make sure we fix that.
Wonderful. And Colin's always spinning those ones and twos behind the camera. Props to everyone behind the camera. When I say everyone, like 3 people, because we're a small team. Number 2, and I want to be very clear because I do not want to get flooded by emails. I want to be very clear. To anyone watching who has news production experience, let me repeat. To anyone watching who has production experience, specifically in the news industry or closely linked industries, I'm looking for a senior producer, basically to run the day-to-day of Status Coup. As much as I love running the behind the scenes, I don't have a lot of time to do actual journalism because I'm running pretty much everything here. And as we grow, it's a lot. And you can't be a journalist and also run the thing. So I posted this about a month ago. We've gotten some applicants. It's a long story. I've interviewed quite a few people, but got to kiss a lot of frogs, I guess, until you get the right one. So if you've worked in news, if you've worked in production, and you have experience, not right out of college, but if you have experience with editing, producing news videos, managing editors, producers, communicating with reporters, please send your resume and a cover letter to info@statuscoup.com, info@statuscoup.com. God bless you in the audience, but if you don't have that experience, this is not something where I'm looking to train anyone. So don't reach out if you don't have experience. But if you do have experience, or you know people who might work in the news industry, we don't disqualify if you work in corporate media. I worked in corporate media. There's a lot of people, good people, who work in mainstream media who are just kind of stuck because they need to pay the bills, but would like to be liberated to work at a place like this. So info@statuscoup.com. Email, you're a recovering mainstream media person. So info@statuscoup.com. If you have that experience, again, senior producer position. And I'm looking to hire, as soon as possible. So I got the members call. We got that. Also, a reminder, we are on Substack. And you could sign up to our Substack. There is a paid option, but you can sign up to our Substack for free. 99% of what we post at Substack is for everyone. It's free. And we post when we're live on the ground, we post at Substack. So that's like an extra notification because a lot of times people don't get notified by YouTube. We post our investigative pieces on Substack, which I'm hoping to have one ready to go tomorrow on Epstein's suicide. So that's just another place to grow because we don't want to just be reliant on YouTube. We want to grow on Substack and elsewhere. Did I miss anything, JT? Anything to promote yourself?
No, I mean, all the stuff that I have, all the irons that I have in the fire, I don't think are quite ready to talk about publicly just yet. But yeah, I mean, get subscribed so you can see all of our reports as they go live.
And a great question here. If you say to me, Jordan, I'm ready. I got $5 a month. What do you want me to do? You want me to sign up on your website, on YouTube, on Substack? We prefer our website. That's statuscoup.com/join. If you already signed up on YouTube, whatever's easier for you, preferably cancel it and sign up on our website. Why I say that is because if you sign up on YouTube, number one, we don't get access to your email. YouTube doesn't give us that. So we're not like sending emails every day begging for money, but we can't add you to our email list to send you, investigative reports, tell you when we're live, etc. So that's a perk of signing up on our website. Number two, YouTube giveth, YouTube take it away. YouTube goes through cycles where they are super censorious. They nuke channels for no reason. So if everybody signed up as members through YouTube, what happens one day if YouTube goes nuclear and gets rid of our channel? Mm-hmm. We'd be really fucked. So that's why for our financial support, which we need to pay everyone and do the reporting on the ground, if if our members are through our website, we have control of your information. If you're through, forget even if they got rid of our channel. If YouTube decided to demonetize our channel, we lose the money that our members were paying, and we don't have your emails to try and get you to switch over. So that's why we encourage people to sign up to our website. And I just think it's good practice anyway to have your paying support under your control, meaning through our website. So if you can, sign up to our website, statuscoup.com/join. You could also, by the way, if you're already a member, you could donate. Donations go directly to funding our reporting. So that's statuscoup.com/donate. There you could do a one-time donation. You could set it to a monthly donation, a donation every 3 months. I think there's different options. So I think I've done enough announcements for the day. My wife is yelling at me to come up with the kitties. So thank you, JT. We're going to have to do this more often. Thank you, Colin. I think I'm going to be live again tomorrow, same time, 4 o'clock Eastern.
Oh, did you want to do the super chats?
Oh, yes. Thank you. All right. Irene, $2. Thank you, Irene. Tech Tight. Hello, good sirs. Thanks for all the amazing coverage. Thank you. Tony D, longtime status quoer. JT and Jordan, I'm really grateful for your reporting. So excited to meet JT on the member call. This fascism is worse than anything I imagined. It's dark days. So it's glad that we have this growing community. Welcome new status quo member, Sam. Thank you. Ivy Change gifted 5 status quo memberships. And by the way, the behind the scenes, when JT is texting me or calling me while he's live in Minneapolis, like, hey, I'm better. I want to wrap up. I'm like, stay live, motherfucker. We're raining new members. Stay live. I don't say it like that.
I don't care. That's -40.
Actually, no, I did tell you.
You did on that. On those days, you did tell us.
I told you. Wrap it up. Lambo, 2 months member. Thank you. Emily Sigmund, $5 Canadian. The fact that it's not the FBI's incompetence that's sus, but the incompetence of the hacker is embarrassing. I'm not so sure that it's incompetence, but maybe. Claudia, new status quo member. Thank you so much, Claudia. Eric Beckwith, $50 super chat. Solidarity status quo. Thanks for being our real fourth estate. Thank you, Eric, for that generous support. Donald James, no relation to Donald Trump, status quo member, 27 months. I will continue to support on the ground journalism. We will continue to provide it as long as you guys help us do it. Albany, $5. Evidence against Trump would have been labeled as lawfare if Biden had released it. Let MAGA face their demon, the monster they elected. I mean, it's a fair point. I'm not going to say that there's no validity to that. With that said, there's a whole lot more in this unrelated to Trump that should have been released. So I disagree, but you're definitely good point. I Flip and Roll became a status quo YouTube member. Thank you. Naomi, new status quo member. Thank you. Christy, new status quo member. Thank you. The Missing Rock, new member. Thank you. T4, $9.99. We appreciate what you do. Please stay safe. Thank you. Wizard, $5 super sticker. Thank you, Wizard. Denise Columbia, OG status quo. I'm so glad I caught you live, Jordan. I've been missing you lately. I've been missing you too. You have no fucking idea the amount of insane behind the scenes shit I've had to do. Don't think I'm slacking. I'm actually working harder than normal. Rocks, status quo member for 2 months. Please post job. Thank you much. We will post it in the description. That's good. Thank you for telling me. Colin, I'll send it to you. Post the senior producer job in the description after this. Good reminder. Eduardo's a new status quo member. Thank you. Chris Garrett, OG status quo member, 56 months. And I believe he's a member on YouTube and our website. So he's double dipping. Thank you, Chris. I support status quo with website and YouTube. You sure do. And he made status quo polos for some of us. So thank you. Yeah. You didn't get one of those?
I did get one. I thought you had gotten me like a second polo randomly. I actually didn't know that that's where it came from.
No.
Thank you.
No, that came from Chris Garrett.
I was also going to say that we also got 4 website members. We had Fear No Evil, Randy, Jan, and Janet join on the website.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. You could sign up anytime. So if you're watching this after the fact, not live, again, we really appreciate it. Think about it. You could support us for as low as 16 cents a day. That's $5 a month. I'm not saying, for some people that's not doable, and that's fine. But for those of you, think about what you might spend $5 a month on or $5 a day on. Do you really need it? Could it be redistributed? Yes, redistributed to actual living, breathing journalism? I think so. That's all I got. Thank you. We'll see you back here tomorrow.